Hello and welcome to Our Game, the first Our Game show of 2025. Nisha Waldron, they said we wouldn't be back, but by God, we're back. So are Tipp. Tipp are back. Our Game is back.
Well, what's the crack? Can you hear me?
It's ropey enough. You must be down in Freshford area. It's ropey enough. I'd say take out the old earpods and we'll belt away then. But it's great to be back again, folks. It's obviously the first show of 2025. Some people are giving out that we weren't here for the club season. That wasn't by design. We'd only love to be here discussing the club season, but we're just taking a little bit of a break. You'll obviously notice that the main man, the Tipp Saint, is not with us. He's gone into hibernation briefly for a while. Although it looks like Tipp might be back, he's kind of delaying his return for another while. But he will be back at some stage. Maybe if Tipp get a big championship win or they go well in the league or something like that. Great to have you all on board. Loads of great comments coming in from our regular viewers. Great to have you all back on board again for another season. And it's great to have Lotto Land on board as our sponsor for the year ahead. Great that they're supporting local independent podcasts. So we really appreciate their support, and we obviously really appreciate all your support as well. Just fly through some quick little comments. GF just says, on the lads. He just says, on the lads, like Lazarus. Lazarus from the podcast wilderness. Stockroom Tim says, Shane's still celebrating Tipp winning the All-Ireland last week. Hardly Stockroom Tim. It was a good win for them to start off, all right, but there's a long road ahead, no doubt. Loads of comments in there. Liam White missed it. Talaman GA, what about no televised hurling game this weekend? Well, at least we have the big game of the weekend been streamed by TG Carter online on Saturday night, Limerick and Cork. But we have lots of thoughts to give on that. Nisha, are you there? Well, you'd know it was the first show of the season that there's a few little technical problems, but no doubt Nisha will be back on board now in a minute. Obviously, the first weekend of the league kicked off last weekend. Some big enough results. Obviously, Tipp having a 12-point win over Galway. Two really inexperienced kind of rookie sides. I personally wouldn't be reading too much into the first round of the league. There's been, if you go back through the last 5 years, and probably if you go back through the last 100 years of the league, there's been results that have had very little bearing on the season and the season as a whole that happened at the start of the year. I'm thinking even Monaghan beating the Dubs in football there last year and not having another win in the league. Similarly, there's been I remember Donegal beating Kerry in 23 and been relegated, and Paddy Carr been gone before the end of the league. So would you be reading much into the start of the league, Nisha, or is it just as we all say, league is league?
League is league, yeah. Not so much, like, really, because like it's a funny one because some teams obviously do far more work than others. You see that even in the hurling there last week. There was, the Clare and Kilkenny game was brilliant, but there was a couple of pacings then as well. Well, pacings, like, just kind of big margins between the teams. Tipp looked to be miles ahead of anyone there. Kilkenny, as usual, I kind of thought as well, like, it's like that's why Billy Drennan was the captain on my fantasy team. Was like, I kind of had a feeling they'd be trying to hit the ground running in the league, especially going to Clare first and all. So yeah, like, just the league is the league and all that kind of stuff, and people peak at different times. So I wouldn't read too much into it. No, I wouldn't read too much.
It's absolutely impossible to know where teams are, isn't it? You've no idea. Like, let's call a spade a spade. Me and you both know anecdotally of teams that have been back months and that have a serious body of work done. And then I also know that there are teams that actually did kind of stick by the rules pretty much and returned when they were supposed to return. So it's only natural. They could be 6 weeks behind, and you can kind of tell the teams that are well ahead and have a lot of work done and maybe the teams that don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I remember just hearing about a couple of teams that were back training before the county finals were even finished. You're kind of going, lads, come on. That's a bit mad. But look, each to their own, and everyone prepares differently. And then you see just with the condensed season maybe as well, they kind of think there's more pressure that kind of you need to have a far deeper squad now, going into championship, because you're going from one league format into another league format, round robin in Leinster, round robin in Munster. So they probably think, like, look, we need to make sure we have about properly somewhere between 22 and 26 lads that are going to be able to start and make an impact in senior championship. So between physically developing them, making sure that they're mentally in tune with the game plan, and interlinking everyone with the squad, you could kind of understand why you'd be back kind of November, like.
Yeah, just a quick one for you. Obviously, we're both big club men. First and foremost, we're all, we're mad into the club season. Na Fianna win the All-Ireland, obviously. What an absolutely, a scintillating performance, to save your best until last. Brilliant, brilliant performance. It could be the guts of 8 or 9 of them in with Dublin. You would imagine with the manager, Neil O'Callaghan, coming in as well, and even some Conor McHugh's going in, Brian Ryan is going in. Talk of a couple more potentially as well. How much of a boost do you think that can give the county team? They've even hit the ground running already by all accounts.
Yeah, they look really, really good against Antrim. Now again, this is the other thing as well, is Davies just in with Antrim. Who knows what they've done, what he's holding back. So it's hard to judge, but they were spraying the ball around lovely there in Croke Park, and again, that's without a full squad. So you'd be hoping, going back, you think cool that when we won the All-Ireland, we probably had, when everyone was fit and able to go, we probably ended up with somewhere around 8 or 9 lads that were in with the Dublin seniors as well, and then you had Con obviously with the footballer. So you'd be hoping it would make some kind of an impact, but it's hard to tell. Galway clubs are always the same, that you'd be hoping it would make an impact with the county team. Never really seemed to. But hopefully now, and then hopefully Neil in charge, and that they just get a good grasp of what's going on, a good grasp of the squad, and try and get, now look, losing Owen O'Donnell, the captain, to the footballers, again, it's a trend in Dublin that it probably can't be helped until somebody decides to go the other direction, maybe. And then maybe, what happened back when Conal Keeney and Dotsie O'Callaghan did it as well. That then a couple of more lads then swayed towards the hurling, and you saw what happened. They won a league, they won a Leinster, they probably were unlucky not to get to an All-Ireland final, or maybe even, be competing for one at definitely 2013. So you'd be hoping this year, because Na Fianna were absolutely brilliant. I know they were savage in the All-Ireland final, but in Dublin there was a couple of games in the club, in the county championship in Dublin. They were brilliant, and playing like that in Parnell Park, which was just even kind of nearly more impressive, because they, the space they have in Croke Park suited them down to the ground. Their game plan, their intelligence on their puckouts, their own puckouts, and then defending Stars puckouts, was just, you could tell that their homework done. They knew the game plan inside out. Even the lads that came in didn't look like they were too far behind at all. It was great. For a Dublin club to be doing that, they're really kind of, since we won the All-Ireland back in 2017, it's kind of anyone that comes out of Dublin now has a fair crack of winning the All-Ireland. Even Crokes, they lost to Ballyhale there a couple of years ago by, what was it, a point or two? And when you think of it, poor old Eddie Gibbons let in a long one over his head, and that was the difference. People that say Ballyhale were absolutely brilliant, which they were, but Crokes weren't far off beating at that time either. So, the county champion coming out of Dublin now the last kind of 10 years is not far off winning Leinster or an All-Ireland. So it's brilliant for the overall standard.
Crokes would be sick, I'd say, to be honest with you, because they, to me, they left that county final behind. But it just goes to show, you're probably thinking whoever wins the Dublin Championship next year potentially could be favourites for the All-Ireland. They're definitely in the top 3 or that. And Crokes, the old classic one of, they beat us by 2 points in the county quarter-final and went on to win All-Ireland. We could be there, but realistically, Crokes are looking at that and thinking, geez, we could definitely be there. Of course we could. So yeah, so there's a nice array of talent in Dublin now. He's got them mobilised very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Which is key to that as well. But we'll come back to the Dubs in a minute. Just flying back on some of the action last weekend. I was in Salt Hill for Tipp and Galway. Tipp looked well ahead of Galway. There's no point in saying any different. And that's with a couple of rookie lads like the likes of Mikey Corker and Sam O'Farrell, Dylan Walsh. I wouldn't have heard much of them before. Andy Ormond I would have known from, say, J.K. Brackens and his club form. But they've really hit the ground running. It is a trend though, isn't it? It is a trend with Cahill sides that they look ahead of everybody at this stage.
Yeah, and you think back, I remember seeing Waterford in person when they won the league under Cal. I remember seeing them in Nolan Park and just being how is a team this good this early in the year? It's geez, they'll be unbelievable in championship. But we know what happened there and all. But yeah, he gets them he must do an awful amount of work over the winter, because again, Tipp last year, I think it was last year, I saw them playing Dublin in the league in Parnell Park as well. and they were absolutely flying. Like, they were a lovely mix of the short pass and long pass and diagonal ball, lads running off the shoulder and knowing the game plan. So, like,
Yeah.
obviously they're doing a lot of work, and they are, again, way ahead of teams. And Micheál Donoghue, again, has just gone back. Obviously, has to kind of revamp a new team almost. So you'd expect Tipp to be ahead of them, but like, to beat them by a score like that maybe was the surprising thing. At home was probably the surprising thing. Like, not surprising that Tipp won, but just maybe the result, the scoreline.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah, on home side, it's listen. I don't tend to run away with these type of things because like Tipp were going well enough in last year's league until the league semi-final. Wheels came off, and realistically the wheels were never back on thereafter for the rest of the year. So it can turn very, very quickly. And with new players, there's going to be there's going to be some bad days, and there's going to be some pain along the way, guaranteed. And Galway will have plenty of pain. The great thing about the league, I suppose, and Donoghue was saying it after, is they're 3 weeks in a row now. Like, that could be quickly forgotten by the Kilkenny game at the weekend. But just on Galway, they looked very raw at the weekend, didn't they? Like, even the body shape of some of them, realistically, miles off probably at the minute, senior inter-county.
And this is the thing where Galway are probably at a bit of a disadvantage, where they have to blood the new lads. Whereas, like, there could be other teams there where you could give them a full year of prep with the strength and conditioning and the training with the team and all that. Whereas Micheál Donoghue comes in, he kind of has to just throw the boys in at the deep end. I know it's only league and all that, so it's not really the deep end, but let's say it's halfway down the pool, where you kind of have no armbands. You're thrown in there, and you're
we've all been there. I had to get pulled out. I had to get pulled out of the pool in UL one time and just stop. Hey, funny story actually. I was in PE, and part of our PE degree was you had to be able to swim a certain amount of the Olympic pool. And like, I was a terrible swimmer. I was head down, no breathing and whatever. And our PE teacher, the swimming teacher, had this like brainwave to do a pyramid going up the pool. So a pyramid, everyone swimming in unison going up the pool. And who was at the apex of the pyramid? The worst swimmer in the class, i.e. me. So about 15 seconds later, like, I was gone. Like, I was treading water, and there was a lifeguard in after me, and I was pulled out or whatever. And I was in Molly's about 2 weeks later, and this girl comes over to me. I stand at the bar, and she's like, "You're in second year PE, aren't you?" And I was like, yeah, sorry, I don't know you. And she's like, "Oh, I pulled you out of the pool there a couple of weeks ago." And I was like, all right, thanks for that. What you drinking?
You're the lad that drowned. But you're from Offaly, sure. Have you any water there at all, apart from the taps?
Yeah, well, very shallow rivers as well. The Camcara and a few more, but not like that. But yeah,
so
but it is like, it's literally, the league is throwing lads in at the deep end, and if you swim, great, but good few lads probably won't swim.
No, and sure, look, but then I never liked the thing in hurling, I suppose in football as well, is like, if you're not ready by 22, you'll never be ready. And then there's an awful lot of lads all over the country where he was in there for the league for 2 years, and sure, he never really made it. It's just like, but sure, he's far better now. He's 27. There's loads of lads around between hurling and football. I know there is, like Dublin is full of them, where you'd be like, well, how is that lad? He might have played minor and under 21, then just wasn't ready to be playing senior or 22 or 23, and then they're just gone between football and hurling.
As well, the penny doesn't drop. Like, the penny dropped for you in your own career at some stage, and the penny dropped for me, and you're like, you get it, like, but it takes
100%.
time.
But that was the thing. I was probably around 26, 27 before I really started seriously considering what I was eating. You kind of had an idea, right? Don't be eating chips and takeaways and things like. But you kind of go, it won't hurt that much. But like, even hydration, like, like, I used to suffer awful with cramps, and the physio was like, you need to drink more water. I was like, I drink loads of it. She's like, drink more. It's just like, right, grand. Like, something that's like just stupid when you think back on it, but like, when you don't know, you don't know, like.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually funny. Remember David Clifford was pulled off at the end during extra time, or maybe at the end of normal time, 2021 All-Ireland semi-final. He was riddled with cramps, and it's something. Despite playing extra time in club games and extra time in county games, it's something that has never happened since. And he obviously addressed it. There was some bit of a deficiency or whatever, but sometimes it
magnesium.
has to happen. Yeah, it has to happen to you, or magnesium, or it could be a little bit of salt, or it could be Diora, like, or could be whatever, but it's gas. You don't know until you know. Some lads are ready to play county at 22. Some lads are not ready to play and be a consistent force till they're 25, 26. Sometimes it's older. Like, Conor McHugh's going in with Dublin now, and I think he's 31. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gas. Like, different lads mature at different levels. Probably people wouldn't have probably considered him maybe mature enough or good enough maybe to play for the Dublin hurlers until maybe the last couple of years when he's just been unbelievable for them. But just on other results the other night, Cork gave Wexford a fair old pasting down in Wexford Park. I'll come to Cork in a second now. I'd be worried for Wexford in general over the coming while, with Liam Mogue retired, Matt O'Hanlon retired, Dee O'Keefe retired. Chin is in Sydney, or was in Sydney. I'm not 100% sure if he's back, but even if he is back, been integrated back into the fold is going to be a difficulty, obviously. They look under pressure and behind the eight ball a bit already.
Yeah. Oh, a bit, yeah. Like, big time again, without the seasoned veterans where you have to throw, like, where they've had some really good under 20 teams that have just been unlucky in Leinster, maybe not to win a Leinster. But, like, again, they'd be maybe 23, some of their oldest lads from them good teams. Like, where you just aren't ready to play a Cork team who were in the Ireland final last year and have a lot of lads off that team playing. So, like, it's just that they aren't quite ready yet. But then, like, it's this whole league system. I don't like it where now they might get relegated and then they're pushed down another couple of year or two or whatever, rather than have the whole all. I don't like this 1A 1B thing. Like, I think that they missed a trick here where keep it 2 groups of 7 but have it all mixed and matched, so it's not just the same teams playing each other over and over between league and championship. That, like, Carlow might get to play Cork, or like Offaly might get to play Waterford. I know they're in 1B as well, like, but you know what I mean, like, where they're crisscrossing and mishmashing a bit, like, rather than just give some of the Leinster teams a better chance to play the Munster teams and see what it's like.
Yeah, I'd be straight with you. I like the 1A and the 1B because I know that Offaly were in I'd say the worst of the 2 divisions, as in the more difficult of the 2 divisions the last couple of years, and you were looking ahead and it was great getting qualification from 2A, and then you're looking ahead and you're like, oh Jesus, Cork are coming to town or Limerick are coming to town. And with the best of in the world, I agree with you totally that you want to be testing yourself against the best, but it's one thing testing yourself against the best, it's another thing taking a couple of hidings in a row from the best.
Yeah, no, and again, so again, I get that, like, but then it's like a case of, like, so you go up from 1B next year, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into a way higher standard that you haven't been at, rather than kind of you might get maybe 2 games at the 1A standard or 3 games at the 1A standard and 3 games at the 1B standard in the 1 year. So it's a nice kind of a mix of, right, okay, that's where we need to get to, while also, we know we're a cut above these lads, so we're somewhere in the middle, and we just need to progress a little bit. Like, that'd be the way I'd prefer to see the league, just because the championship is a league system anyway as well. So it's just like, where the league kind of even has lost more value, just then make it just a 14-team league and have Group A, Group B, and mix and match, and have, top 2 play semi-finals and bottom 2 on each side play the relegations. Like,
I like the current format, I'll be honest with you, because I look at it from a point of view of, would say, Offaly getting up to 1A. Whenever they get, if and when they get to that level, they'll have earned their place at that level. And there's plenty of jeopardy in 1A with 2 coming down and 2 coming up. So, like, the way I look at it is, if Offaly want to be duking it out with Limerick and Cork, they'll earn their place this year or next year or whatever. Similar with winning the Joe McDonagh and up to Leinster. I don't know. I think it might be a little bit soon for them in Leinster, but they're there now and they're getting a chance to kind of. But I like the idea of the jeopardy. Like, it already seems more important than previous years and a bit more meaningful. Do you know what I mean?
Especially, I suppose, again, I take that point again as far as development for, like, especially for a team like Offaly, we have loads of young fellas talking about under 20s, like, loads of young fellas looking to develop and looking to. But sure, what harm? And I suppose, but then again, you have Waterford in the group as well, so they'll expose them to it too, and Dublin, you'd think. But look, sure, whatever. It's never going to be perfect. I just think there's a room to tweak it even a little bit more, where you'd have 14 teams and there's a bit of freedom for the higher up lads then to experiment and use a squad. But look, I don't know. The league is the league.
Yeah, it surely is. Just on, like, Cork were impressive the other night, but, like, realistically, that was a glorified challenge game though too, realistically.
True, and they have the ability to do that to teams probably nearly more than any team, because they're so athletic. Some of their lads are so athletic, and then they have a nice mix as well. Like, remember last year, I was talking to you. I didn't like the way they played, and it was right on the way into the Limerick game, and I was kind of giving out as, like, they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. But then they changed against Limerick, and look what they did. Like I love Connolly on the edge of the square. You know, just Fitzgibbon, obviously, just like beast, just a beast. Like, you know, so they really do have the ability to do that to a team when they're not ready to go. Like Cork will show you up for what you are, athletically,
They're a
speed.
frightening team to play against if you're down the
Ah,
cup, aren't they? Like they are
yeah,
the last team to see coming. It's funny because I've seen it, like as good as Limerick were the last 5 or 6 years, they didn't tend to annihilate weaker teams. Like Westmeath gave them a good game at different times. Offaly gave Cork, like if Cork can just absolutely steamroll you and beat you 30 points if you're down anyone or
yeah,
off it at
yeah.
all.
Yeah, and they go for the juggler and like that because they're so fast and so athletic. They never seem to tire, and then they bring in lads that are nearly the exact same that can just run the legs off whoever's in too, like and tired already. So they I don't know, like I know Kilkenny, like the really great Kilkenny team had that kind of always had that 15-20 minute spell where they get 2 or 3 goals, but it's not the same as what Cork do, like where they just open up and especially in the league where when they're ready to go, like them and Tipp now, if they were playing, I'd actually love to see them be playing this weekend, just to see them because the two of them looked to be the probably fittest and fastest teams and most ready teams, like let's say.
Yeah. On like Cork haven't won a league since '98, haven't won the All Ireland since 2005. I like okay, they're not a league team apparently. Like surely that would be first and foremost on Pat Ryan's wish list for over the coming months. Surely, and people would say, "Oh, it's the league; it doesn't really matter." Limerick won the league in '23 and won the All Ireland. Clare won the league last year, got a bit of silverware. All of a sudden, they ended up with the biggest and best piece of silverware at the end of the year. Maybe you wouldn't go gung ho for it. But if I was Pat Ryan, I was involved there, I'd be like, Jesus, let's give this league a right rattle, and they have the depth to do it without like overburdening a lot of their big players.
Yeah, see, I'd say what you're doing is like ideally, like a Pat Ryan is, you go game by game, you try something maybe game by game, let's see how it goes, and then once it gets into maybe the last group game, you see, hey, lads, we have a chance to win the league. Then you start kicking it in because you're kicking it in to run into the group stage of the championship. So it's when you get a sniff at a trophy is when it really, I think, kicks off a bit. Like, and that's why, yeah, like that'll be the thing. It's like because you don't really mind if you don't win the league, but like, just like it's a great medal to get. Like if you could get it, like we lost the Division Two final with Derry, and it still annoys me, like, because it'd be a nice medal to have, like, but you know, just like I mean, Cork can't really be throwing their nose up. Nobody can really be throwing their nose up at silverware now at the minute, especially for a national one. Like, there's only two to go around, and Limerick have been gobbling them up lately, like so. I think they should definitely be trying to win the league. Every team should be trying to win the league, really, especially if you haven't had a cup and you're trying to develop a winning mentality or develop new players or whatever. Like if you Kenny, I guarantee you, Derek Ling would love to win the league as well.
Yeah, guaranteed. Yeah, I think of the teams that'll really give it a right lash, I do think Cork will give it a good lash. As good as last year was, they still finished the year without a piece of tin, like. And at least it's some solace if you've won something. So there's 3 trophies to go for this year. Like I see no reason why they wouldn't go hard at the 3 of them. Hard
No,
enough, like because like you throw in with say Pádraig Power was brilliant the other day, Cormac
yeah,
O'Brien, you know, and
yes,
like
yes,
while Brian Hayes was brilliant last year, like he is still trying to establish himself. So there are lads, you know, I think they've got this massive wealth of talent. Like I think Ben Cunningham pulled up last night for UCC. Might be out for a couple of weeks, but you look at someone like him, you look at Brian Saunderson in the goals, you look at Micheál Mullins, you look at Dermot Healy, you look at William. I don't know, is it Leahy or Lahi that's pronounced it down there? It's Lahi and Tipp. I'm not
Leahy, I
sure.
think.
I'm not sure what it is in Cork, but like they have a fair panel to pull from, and they lost no one from last year. Darragh O'Leary's the only one they lost, and he went down that run with Watergrass Hill. So they have to say, I think that's really positive as well. That even lads that weren't getting game time are still involved. I
Yeah.
think it's probably a sign that okay, something is brewing here, and I do think something is brewing down there.
Yeah, you would think so. And I mean, like, look at the club, the team in the junior, intermediate, and senior final. Like, and you know, that's nothing to be sniffed at either. Like, so motoring well, and then again, obviously, the Watergrass Hill lads had the experience of winning with some of them anyway. Had the experience of winning with Dimmy and then winning with Watergrass Hill. So interesting. Like, it is interesting because they obviously have the talent. And look, they went to extra time in the All Ireland final, like, and all that. So they're not far off it. And they are like that Limerick game when they changed their puck out strategy and started going long and stuff, showing that they could mix it. Like, and that's what you have to be able to do now in hurling. Is like you have to be able to go long to open up the short and go short to open up the long. Whereas they were kind of too obsessed for too long with going short and working it out and running it and pit pop and run kind of. Whereas now they have the ability with the mix of forwards that they have, the range of different types of forwards that they have, and then the new lads coming in. And you'd wonder as well, would some of them stars lads make a dent on the starting team come championship? Like, because like I liked Cian Darcy this year in the club championship. I thought he was very good midfield. So you'd wonder how many of them, if any of them, will make a dent in the starting team. Like, because like that, you know, I was at the game where they played Fecal, and they really found something and kicked on a good bit from there. Now I know the Fiat had kind of hurled them well in the final and kind of exposed them a bit, like, but you'd be wondering there, could they add to it and can they use the momentum from the three clubs, like whatever? Is there any momentum? Like, this is the other thing, like you can't really judge it or measure it until it happens. But I tell you, running into this weekend against Limerick will be a good one. And thanks be to God, Buikas Ladia, TG Carr came in and saved the day for us.
Because all anyone was saying was Govora Dia Urum when it was happening. Like, and people will say that TG Carter or TG Carter obviously picked the football initially. I would imagine, and that's a tasty football time. We'll get into that later with Adam Minant, the Kerry football journalist. That's a tasty football tie as well. It's obviously Jim McGuinness against the Dubs, but like Cork and Limerick threw up two of the greatest hurling games of all time last year. One of which obviously was not broadcast on the national broadcaster. So it's great that, like, what I love about TG Carter is that there was a problem, and they realised there was a problem, and there was a public swell against it, and they solved the problem. And you know what I mean? And maybe they would admit that they made a bit of a mistake not having it on, not being their first preference. But now they have it and people can see it, and it's brilliant. Like, it is going to be a belter. Like, the thing about Cork is Cork have probably marked Limerick's card as regards how they're going to play. They'll play probably completely differently on Saturday evening, I would imagine. I don't see them going to try and hammer the hammer like they did last year. And then obviously with Limerick, Nishan, we obviously haven't spoken about this yet. Like, how big of an impact is not having Nicky Quaid? I personally think it's absolutely massive.
Huge.
He dictated things at the back. He controlled things. But the only thing I will say is, at least it's not happening in the middle of the Munster Championship. At least, like, whoever comes in will be properly road tested. And Jason Glan's had a few games. Dowling, which is a big one. Obviously, him coming back, he's had a few games. Conor Hanley-Clark is probably the third of them at the minute, and he's playing with UL at the minute. He's fighting with Derek Fahy for the number one spot in UL at the minute. But, like, how big of an impact do you think that can have?
Absolutely massive, because, like, his puck outs are so good. He organises everything. Obviously, he's like, and this stupid term that gets thrown around, but I'm going to use it anyway. But he's like kind of like a quarterback of the team. Like, he really is. Like, usually it's out the field.
Cade on focal or Squelga? Quarterback.
For what? Quarterback? Nilisagum, actually. I wasn't a part of the coverage for the American football for TG Carr, but Caharu, I don't know. On Marshall, I suppose you'd be what it'd actually be. There wouldn't be a direct translation. It'd be because you're in charge, so you'd be the master. They have Marshall and Leroy, I suppose. But like, that's what he is. Like, he's such a class goalie. But then the way he can control the game and the tempo of the game, when again he knows when to go short, he knows when to go long, he knows who's winning and who to go to. He dictates the tempo an awful lot. Like, and again, he has the ball in his hand probably more than anybody else in the field. Well, unless obviously the defenders are playing really well, you know, the poke outs are down, but he has the ball in his hand and he has a free play, you know, more than anybody else in the field. Like, so he's a huge loss, I think, absolutely huge.
And you know what? Like, when their defense was breached probably in the last couple of years more than it had been prior to that, I don't think his shot stopping ability got the credit that it deserves. Like last year, how many times did he save their bacon last year? Do you know what I mean? Like, his shot stopping was underrated, I think, up until the last couple of years. He's an unbelievable shot stopper. Like, it's basically like, I would say something similar to everyone always said about James McGarry not getting an all-star, that he was never tested or whatever it was. He was never tested because the defense was so good in front of him. Quaid has been probably tested more in the last couple of years than he had been prior to that, and he has come up trumps nearly every time. I'll just fly through a couple of quick comments. Quarterback must be the most annoying term into hurling. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a couple of terms have come in The likes of transition is one that's nearly used as a verb now that really annoys me, though, I have to say. Grog Ogo Grakon says, Karu Cooley Darla Folklore.ie. Okay, very good. The old folklore.ie. I haven't used that since leaving cert. since leaving cert Irish. I know 36 and counting has been talking regular smack in the comments about this being this year is going to be 37 and counting, which will be very interesting. Porter just mentioned about the sweeper system. The scuba door, I think, was the word that TG Carr used there. 36 and counting just says exactly. Fuel likes Jackie Tyrrell's using it constantly on the Sunday game. Awful. A big fan of Jackie now, but I wouldn't be a big fan of the quarterback or that type of language. That rugby language, American football language, soccer language, whatever language it is, drifting into GA. Not a big fan of it. You're an NFL aficionado, Nisha, so you probably don't mind that sort of language drifting into you.
That's what I was saying. Apologies for using the word quarterback. Apologies for that. But yeah, it's just the terminology crisscrossing. But again, like what he's the dictator of play, let's say. So it's just kind of everyone relates the term quarterback to that. You understand immediately what it is. Like I don't like it. I hate it. Everyone always says it about a centre back or a sweeper, let's say in hurling. That like he's like, oh, he's like a quarterback. It's like, well, he's not, because he's not throwing the ball. So it's just I know I understand the frustration with it, but it's just kind of the only term we have until we come up with our own.
Tá Babog and Queena the background there, so we are having a few issues. This is bound to be the case, so there's no issue there. As regards Limerick for 2025, I don't know what you think, Nisha, but obviously Quaid not being involved I wouldn't say it's going to stack the deck, but it's going to make things a bit more difficult. Colin O'Neill is out for the early rounds of the league. He'll be back, obviously. They've changed captaincy as well. My understanding of that is that Declan Hannon actually stood down as captain, which is a totally different thing than taking the captaincy off him. What do you think of that? And even Cian Lynch being captain, and I know he was captain. Him and Declan lifted the trophy in 2023, but like Cian has played sporadically enough the last couple of years, and he's played very well, I would say, sporadically enough in the last couple of years. And I would just there's a couple of lads that's probably big years in Limerick. Big year for Sean Finn, obviously. Had a bit of trouble coming back from the cruciate last year. Probably never really got up to the pace of things. It's a big year for Cian Lynch as well, especially as captain. And like I'd actually like to see him trimming down a bit and getting maybe a bit more dynamic and a bit more wiry, rather than just thought he looked a small bit maybe kind of muscle bound. I think he needs to get back to movement is his big thing, and being very dynamic. But where do you see, say, him going into 2025?
Yeah, so like last year we did the league semi-final against Kilkenny down there, and I was talking to Mark Foley about this, like, and he actually, when I seen him, this was my first thought, was he actually looked taller, and Mark Foley said, yeah, he's after leaning down, like he's after chopping himself down a bit, like, because he had to, because he thought even himself, apparently now, so the word goes, that he was a bit bulky. And again, I'd agree with you there. He kind of probably went too heavy on the kind of bulking up part, and would have been better off, and are better off. Hurlers are better off being that like light, lean, and I even feel it myself now as well in my mid-30s now, that like you're not 12 stone anymore.
Yeah, I think the word I always use, what's the perfect build for a hurler, or what did it need to be? Wiry would always be what I would use. Able to hop off lads into tackles, but also able to find a bit of space if it's there or whatever it is. And it's a fine balance, because you need to do all the conditioning that everyone else is at and get to that level, but you also need to be able to move around the pitch. Like you're covering a ridiculous amount of ground, and a lot of it at top speed. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what we will see from Cian Lynch this year, but I would expect a massive bounce. Fuel just has it in here about Jason Gillan. He just said Jason Gillan can poke a ball square to small square, but Dowling has lots of experience. I think it's going to be fascinating. Dowling obviously brings big game experience, obviously as an outfield player, but Gillan is kind of new kid in the block. He was brilliant in that Fitzgibbon campaign last year for Mary I, and he has a fair whack of a ball. Now I would say him and Dowling are both big options from long range frees. Another interesting one would be whether Dermot Burns can get back to that level that he was at in 23 and 24 when he was an absolute weapon. Like a weapon from play, a weapon from frees, a weapon in the skies. You obviously had it in your native county in Kilkenny, like how they bounced back from losing the 5 in a row. Like, and even I remember thinking, even in 06 when they won, like JJ Delaney was missing to the cruciate before the All-Ireland final. It didn't matter because they were in that sort of frame of mind. What will that do for their hunger even coming into this year? And will the lack of or absence of personnel matter that much?
Well, like, this is a funny thing with Limerick, is like it hadn't seemed to ever catch up on them until last year. Like, they kept winning all, like, how many finals have they won without Sean Finn or Declan Hannon is missing or Cian Lynch is missing, and they were still winning. And then, like, but the thing is, like, so see when they get used to winning like that, and you could kind of tell and see this from the outside looking at Kilkenny at the time. Now, I was only a teenager growing up and watching them and all, but like, you could kind of tell that, like, they really hated not being the champion and they had to get it back. And it was like, you know, it was like, oh, you know, well, sure, would you not get sick of winning or whatever? It's like, how would you get sick of winning? I remember Tommy Walsh said one time, he was asked, what was it? How do you keep going back, Tommy? And he said, well, I often thought it'd be much harder for the lads that keep losing. And I was just like, that's actually a great point, because, like, why wouldn't you? Like, it's the best part about it is that you're winning. You want to go there to win, like, so. And then when you win one, you want to win another. And that was, again, like, just relating back to us, like, let's say with Coola there with a team, like, we won the first county final, and then you go, oh, beating a Leinster final, you go, oh, what do we do now? And you go, well, you go win another one. Come on, you're beating a Leinster final. You want to get back there, and you only have a window of a certain amount of time, and the Limerick lads guaranteed want to gobble up as many as they can. And then you're sitting then again with the younger fellas who are obviously really good, who have been sitting and waiting and watching and can't break into the team for long enough, that they should have a different level of hunger that will either overtake, you know, as in, like, they'll either overtake the older lads, or else it'll spur on the older lads and make them feel kind of younger, like, or whatever. It'll do one thing or the other. So then the young lads either overtake and step up and bring on a different level of hunger because they want their medal. Like, that was, again, like, that was always the thing. If you hang around long enough with a team, I haven't, I suppose. That if you
hey, you said it before I said it. You said it before I said it.
I was like, who's going to make this joke? So it's like, you know, that you see, like, let's say when I was 32, 33, and you're kind of going, lads coming through at 22, and you're like, look, like, I'm not going to be able to chase that lad. Like, it's as simple as that. It's like, I want to, and I know what I have to do, but my legs are not answering the frequency that's coming out of my brain. This is it, like, kind of thing. So I wouldn't be worried about them at all. And obviously they've been around the block so many times. John Kiley knows exactly what he's doing. And I think their young lads, they kind of blood. I always like the way they blood in their young fellas, where when they're winning, they bring on lads for 10 or 12 minutes, you know. And so you get thrown into it where it's still championship pace and hard hitting and all, but you're getting your 10 or 12 minutes, and then also that nobody starting has a divine right to stay on the field. Like, that's another thing. I always liked the way he kind of tweaked and kind of rubbed that lads, because that would annoy me now, getting taken off all the time, like, as well. And I'm sure it annoys them. Whereas, like, you know, you kind of have to do more, and then the subs are looking to get more than 12, more than 15 minutes. They want the hour, like, you know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. Like, Adam English has got a nice bit of time. Cathal O'Neill is obviously, like, Cathal O'Neill when fit is a certain starter now, because he can play in a myriad of different positions. Aidan O'Connor's got a bit of time. He's probably going to get more time. Donegal Dálaigh has got a bit of time. He'll get more. Fergal O'Connor, the same. That blend of loyalty and ruthlessness from Kylie's going to be really interesting. Like, I personally think this is probably the year where we see a structural change in the team. And P-Well had an interesting question in there about Hannon. Is there any chance of Hannon ending up back in the forward line? What do you think of that, Nisha? Like, could Declan Hannon play the 11 role unbelievably effectively for a guy who, you know, he started his inter-county career as a forward. He plays full forward, I think, or 14 or 11 for Adair a lot of the time. Like, we've seen lads, he's already been moved back to 6. Is there any reason he couldn't be moved back up? Hayes has been started as centre forward, and then he ended up wing back, and then he ended up full forward, then he ended up wing back. Like, we probably won't learn that. Well. Yeah, Barry Nash as well. And Barry Nash is a possible for 6. I think O'Donoghue's a possible for 6. It's going to be fascinating to see where different lads kind of fall. But where do you stand on Hannon at the minute? Where do you think he will play?
I don't know, but I wouldn't put it past him, basically, would be the answer to that, because he's such a good hurler has such a good hurling brain. It's a matter of, can he still get around the field the same? That's what it is. That's what it always is. Like, you might have a better understanding than you've ever had on hurling. You might, the one thing that should never, or the two things that never should slow down are your brain and your hands, like in hurling, right? Your legs will slow down. That's just a given. So that's the thing, is like, can he get around the field still? Can he do the work that's required of somebody playing in that position? And John Kiley will know, and he'll know, and everyone around him will know.
Yeah, there's not,
if he can or he can't, So
yeah.
that's the thing. Can he get around? But because I wouldn't put it past, because he definitely is the hurling. And again, with Adair, I think what they did a lot was give him number 15 and let him run wild, basically.
Yeah, and there's a possibility of that, definitely. And maybe it's an impact sub role. I don't know whether he has the body at the minute to be able to play 6 in the cut and thrust of a big, huge game with the injuries he's gone through the last couple of years. It's probably a little bit questionable, but there's so many variables with Limerick this year. You wouldn't be sure. You don't know who's going to be in goals. You don't know who's going to be centre back. You don't know which young lads are going to be maybe certain starters this year, which of the older fellas, the more experienced fellas, are going to be the ones coming off the bench now. It's going to be really interesting. Just even listen to, in fairness to John Kiley, he's done a couple of interviews in the off season, and it's great to see it, because it's hard to get bits and pieces out of lads. And I think there's a big promotional miss that we're missing there. And don't even get me started on what was the league launch last Friday, which was an absolute farce by all accounts, and doing it the day before the league starts is absolutely ridiculous. And we've about 6 months to get ready to promote these competitions with the split season, and we still managed to make an absolute hames of it. That's another story altogether. But what do you expect Saturday night, Nisha, real quickly, just in Cork and Limerick? Part of me expects a bit of blood and thunder. Another part of me is like, how many cards will be shown here? I do think it'll be interesting, but I don't think they're going to be killing each other like they would in the championship game. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Sorry. I think it'll be as close to a championship match as you'll get. Okay. I think. Now, with probably, as in for this time of the year, let's say, I thought Clare and Kilkenny, even like last weekend, was as good a league game as you're going to get. Like some of the, like Mossy Keown scores and stuff, the hits, the tackles, the work rate, I thought was brilliant, especially in the conditions. And then the next thing is then Limerick and Cork, they already have the rivalry. They know as well, like, right, Limerick, if I was on the Limerick panel or involved in the Limerick panel, like, what more motivation do you need? Like, how annoying must last year have been that they were beaten by Cork, like, where you kind of go, and this is your first chance to get back at them. And, Limerick didn't play, or sorry, Limerick are I would say, had targeted this one early on, like, and are ready for it.
Yeah, 100%. The question in there from 36 and counting just says, Michael, what do you expect from Offaly in the Leinster campaign? I think Leinster's going to be tough. I was disappointed last weekend. I thought we'd get 2 points on board, and it would have given us a bit of breathing space. In fairness, Carlow deserved a point, and we deserved probably what we got. We gave Martin Kavanagh 12 frees, and he scored 12 frees, and he just can't do that at this time of the year, unfortunately. A good free taker will win games at this time of the year, or draw games at least. I think we'll get a bit of short-term pain in the Leinster Championship, and a lot will come down to when we play Antrim, realistically, and what sort of a result, if any, we can get in that game. There's a possibility of picking up points elsewhere. You wouldn't be frightened of Wexford at the minute, definitely not. So it's, yeah, I'm not unbelievably optimistic. I do think it's going to be tough, and I think it will come down, a lot of it will come down to probably one game, and it's whether you can get the result in that one game. Like, Carlow obviously went down last year in that Antrim game. Like, Carlow were relegated from the Leinster Championship last year after the best result in their history a couple of weeks previous, when they got a draw against their neighbours Kilkenny. The attritional rate of games in the round robin is really, really difficult, and you saw it with Antrim last year. Like, I wouldn't say they went 100% against Kilkenny in round one, took a hiding in Nolan Park. They went 110 a week later and got a result against Wexford. You kind of, to some extent, when you're at that stage of your journey, you kind of have to pick and choose your battles a bit, and that's not ideal. But there will be a big ring around that Antrim game, and that will tell a lot. At the weekend, who are missing Brian Daigan, Screeney's out for the guts of the league by all accounts. He's going to miss obviously all of Fitzgibbon with UL. Killian Kiley be back in about a month or so, I think. Who else were we missing? There was a couple more that we were missing. Owen Cattle was missing as well. So a lot of kind of a lot of like pretty much guaranteed starters that we were missing. So I suppose you can't crib at the result that we got at the weekend. I'm just going to fly through a couple of the other games for this weekend. So you obviously had that big Cork and Limerick bumper game down in the park Saturday evening, been streamed on TG Car. You have other games on Saturday, Division 2 tie between Derry and Down. Down had a brilliant result last weekend, beating Kildare. You probably have Down, Kildare and Kerry as the three teams maybe that you're thinking could come out of Division 2. So Down are definitely on the front foot. That won't be simple. Derry were in the Ring Cup final last weekend. Down are obviously operating a tier ahead of them. So you probably would have maybe expect Down there to get the result there. Kildare and Kerry, like if Kildare don't get a result at home in Newbridge against Kerry on Saturday, like barring results going their way, they're in big trouble. Big trouble. And Kerry's game was obviously cancelled last weekend. So they're probably not behind the 8 ball, but you'd imagine they're starting 2 or 3 points deficit just because they don't have that competitive game under their belt. Other games, Division 3, Cavan Sligo. Sligo were beaten by London last weekend. Wicklow are playing London, obviously. Anthony Nash involved with a coach as London this year, with London this year under former clubmate of mine, Neil Rogers. So 2 teams that won last weekend. London had a good win over Roscommon, 115 to 110 in Ruislip. That's an important game probably for what the table will look like at the end of the season as well. Wicklow have a good few bodies back on board that they didn't have for long stages last year. Good few of the Bray crew and the Carno Emmets crew as well back on board there. Probably would just marginally favour Wicklow there, particularly on the home side, and obviously in all the logistics that are brought into it there. With London travelling across, it's not simple. It's obviously nice for a lot of lads to be getting back home or been around Ireland for the weekend, but it's 1 o'clock of a Saturday, so it's logistically difficult enough, shall we say. And in Division 4 you have Monaghan against Laois, that's in Emmy Vale. The other Division 1A games on Sunday, so you have Tipp against Wexford. Tipp put themselves in a lovely position. If they get a result against Wexford in Semple Stadium on Sunday, you'd imagine they have 1 foot already in 1A for next year. A lot of people talking about like that Tipp will be going hard for the league and trying to win a league. I still think Tipp are a long way off that, I would have to say. I wouldn't be reading too much into last weekend's game. You'd imagine Wexford will get a bit of a bounce this weekend and to be stung from that, that bad result against Cork, but they're down so many bodies, it's hard to have much confidence in them. Good and Ignorant, which I'm a big fan of on the playing field, says, "Oh, so nice to have our game back. Was lost without it." Yeah, was lost myself without it, but it's great to have it back for the county season now for the next 6 months at least. The other Division 1A game, Kilkenny against Galway. Kilkenny had a good win against Clare last weekend. Nisha was just mentioned there about Mossy Keown. Brilliant, like five from play. And his role of, like, it's funny, he can play kind of anywhere in the top 6. He can be that foraging wing forward that can score from distance, or he can be your goal getter inside. He had a really good season last year, maybe aside from probably maybe the All-Ireland semi-final. So he was outstanding last weekend with five from play. And they're welcome in Galway, obviously, to Nolan Park this weekend. That's deferred. It's on the TG Catter app as well. Galway need to get some sort of result this weekend because, especially with all the new faces that they had, that it can be a bit demoralising if you fall from one heavy defeat to maybe another heavy defeat. So I would expect a lot better from Galway this weekend. I have to say though, I would be a big believer in Donoghue and the project kind of that he's building there, and I would have a lot of faith that will come good in the long term. And like, without being smart, and I'm obviously a Leinster man, as is Nisha, but I'd have, you have a lot more leeway or room to maneuver in that Leinster Championship than you have, than Tipp have in Munster. So I'd have a lot of faith in Galway turning things around there. And if you look at the names they're missing last weekend, Dottie Burke, David Burke, Cottle Mannion, Pádraig Mannion, that's 4 at least guaranteed starters that you're missing last weekend. So I'd expect a lot more from them this weekend. Division 1B, Antrim obviously started poorly last weekend. They were blown out of the water by Dublin, particularly in the second half. They're playing Westmeath up in Belfast on Saturday. Interesting one there. So you have Saoirse Bulfin, who was Davies' right-hand man when Clare won the All-Ireland in 13, and his right-hand man again
Delighted to be here, Bernie. Thanks a million for having me.
Good man. Funny weekend last weekend. Obviously, you're focusing mainly on Kerry. The Kerry game didn't go ahead. I don't know. What's your reading on the ground? Was there shenanigans involved, or Donegal seemed to play a lot of other games last weekend, but they didn't play their Division 1 football game?
Well, look, I think whenever Jim McGuinness is involved, there's always suspicions about mind games and things like that, particularly down here. But no, look, I think to be fair, it was the GA that came in and decided that the game wasn't going to go ahead. So I don't know if Donegal had any involvement in it at all. But yeah, look, it's not ideal. I suppose we're all looking forward to the new rules and seeing how they're going to pan out. We're going to have to wait until this weekend now to see it from Kerry's point of view. But what I will say is that it's not the end of the world that the game wasn't played, but it will have a knock-on effect on the schedule for Kerry and Donegal in the next couple of months. So the way the league fixtures were working out was that there was a block of 2 and then a break, a block of 3 and then a break and then another block of 2. So now Kerry versus Donegal has been refixed for next Saturday, the 8th of February. So it's between the first 2 blocks, if you get me. So Kerry and Donegal are going to be going from this weekend 5 weekends in a row. I mean, like, maybe players like that. I'm sure some players will be happy enough with that. From a sports science point of view, the first 5 weeks of the season playing five tough games in Division 1 in a row, I don't know, is that ideal, but I'm sure between Jack and Jim and their backroom team, they'll figure it out.
Jack and Jim, Jack and Jill. Yeah, you might. I'm going to throw one at you, and you might kick me out for a second, Adam, because I need to let a bit of light into this room, because it looks like I'm doing this show from a cave. Just a quick one. What are you expecting from Kerry this weekend? And what are you expecting even from the season ahead? Jack has already kind of said that it's going to be his last year by all accounts. He did an interview with Colin Keys last weekend where he said as much, and he said he felt a duty to stay on, given the amount of movement in the backroom team with Mike Quirk leaving, and obviously Paddy Tally's gone. He's got taken over Derry. What do you expect from Kerry? And Micheál Byrne's back in as well, which is a big one too.
Yeah, it's very hard to know with the new rules. I think everyone's in the same boat, really. We're all kind of wondering how it's going to pan out. Are the new rules going to suit our players? Are they going to suit us tactically? Yeah, look, I think a lot of people were expecting Jack to step away after this year. In his previous 2 spells with Kerry, he didn't stay beyond 4 years. This will be his 4th year this time. On top of that, I mean, whatever he wants to do himself, there generally isn't, an appetite to keep a Kerry manager on if he doesn't win an All-Ireland in 3 consecutive years. So going back as far as the 70s, that was always the case. Very few managers. In fact, Eamon Fitzmaurice is the only outlier of Kerry managers in the last 40 or 50 years who has actually stayed on beyond the 3rd year of not winning an All-Ireland. And that's because he already had a contract essentially before that season started. So, yeah, I think there would be an expectation that this would be Jack's year. Obviously, we're all hoping that he'll go out on a high. I think, there's a question down here at the moment is his legacy. He's obviously a great manager. He's won All-Irelands every time he's managed Kerry. He's largely popular, although no Kerry manager is universally popular either. But, he's going into this year knowing that if he doesn't win an All-Ireland and he leaves having not won in the last 3 years with this team, I think he'd be disappointed not to have gotten 2 in his 4 years with the team that they have at the moment, with Clifford and other guys that are playing at a high level. So I think I wouldn't say pressure, because I don't think Jack really minds about that kind of stuff. I'd say the pressure will be on himself to get the most out of him this year and to finish on a high, because as I said, look, he won't want to go on a loss. But you mentioned Micheál Byrne there. I think that's really, really interesting that Byrne is back in the panel this year, because there was a lot of confusion about what actually happened. When Byrne left the panel last year, we were all told, and we were, I won't say fed the story, but the story was put out there, and it wasn't denied anywhere that Micheál has stepped away because he wasn't getting enough game time, and he had been taken off in the first game against Derry in the league last year. It wasn't long after that it was announced that he was after leaving the panel. So, but obviously Burns did an interview with Cullen Parkinson there towards the end of last year. He came out and said that it was actually Jack who dropped him. Jack took him out to the Europe Hotel for lunch, and Micheál wasn't expecting it at all. Jack said, "Look, you're not in my plans," basically, which is really unusual in the middle of the league to tell a player that. And this isn't the guy who's number 36 or number 37 on the panel. Like, this is a guy who came on in the final the year before and who's played lots of minutes for Kerry. So going by that, obviously the assumption would be that, well, Jack must not have time for him, to do that to a player in the middle of the league. So first of all, because of that reason, I wasn't sure if Burns would get back in. No, on form, 100%. He's 100% one of the best half forwards in Kerry. He was brilliant for Crokes last year on their run and going into this year on their run to the All-Ireland semi-final. Especially with Stephen O'Brien and Adrian Spillane stepping away. That's 2 half-forward options gone. It was a no-brainer on football terms alone to bring Burns back in. But when Jack let go of him last year, I just wasn't really sure. And even the fact that when Burns came out and did the interview and said that, I was thinking, Jesus, Burns think himself that he's not going to get back in. But obviously Jack is more pragmatic than we maybe give him credit for.
I think it's actually a great sign of a manager that he would kind of nearly admit that he was wrong. But like maybe he was wrong, but Burns has certainly proved him wrong as well. Have to throw one at you because it immediately came to my head when we were talking there, and I'm totally putting you on the spot. Who's the next Kerry manager?
You should be asking Patrick O'Sullivan that, not me. It's a very good question, right? Because the same thing happened the last time when Kerry lost to Tyrone in 21 and the pressure was ramping up on Peter Keane. Obviously, the way things are in Kerry, that was, like I said, his third year without winning an All-Ireland. The pressure was getting too high. Like it was kind of inevitable that he was going to go. But then the conversation turned to like, hang on, who's next? Like, what's the succession plan? And I think Kerry have been guilty of that in the past, where everything's about this year. We have to win this year. We're going to back this fella this year. And if it doesn't work out, we'll figure it out after. And I think I'd be hopeful that they won't make the same mistake again, because it felt like they were scrambling to interview fellas and, line up this guy and the other guy. I don't know if there's an obvious choice. Now, Jack O'Connor, you could say it worked out because he won the All-Ireland straight away in his first year. You can't argue with that. And as I said, Jack O'Connor is obviously broadly very well respected. But it's a good question because, like, if it is going to be Jack's last year, I don't think that there's really obvious candidates standing out. I mean, Tomás O'Shea is over the 20s. Obviously, he's really popular down here. If the 20s have another good year this year, if they go all the way, there'll be people clamoring for him to get the job, of course, but that's not a guarantee. I think there's the candidates that are maybe lining up to come in next. I wouldn't say that they're obvious candidates. There's no one that's sticking out that's saying, okay, look, that's sorted. So I think that's something that hopefully Kerry J will be thinking about over the next, 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, Jack Nulty just put in a comment there. Pat O'Shea, who just has done remarkable stuff with Crokes, and obviously he was Kerry manager for 2 years. They won All-Ireland in his first year. They're beating All-Ireland final in his second year. He said Tomás O'Shea or Mark Fitzgerald. I do think it's interesting that Mark Fitzgerald has gone back into the system again. And like I wouldn't think he wouldn't be definitely front runner in my head to be the next Kerry manager, but potentially maybe to be in a setup. Then you're looking at them doing something completely different. Because there's always someone within the setup, and Donaghy ain't within the setup, but he has fairly proved himself elsewhere. So that's going to be interesting. Obviously, Adam, the main talking point over the weekend was the rules. Give me what you liked first. What did you like from the new rules?
Yeah, I think there was quite a bit to like, really. I know it's kind of hard judging after just a few games, but I like the solo and go. I think that's an automatic thing that we're going to keep. I mean, there's no argument against that rule. Like, it just speeds everything up.
It's a killer when you give away a free. Like, it's just like, it used to be stop, get back behind the ball. Instead, he can even throw the ball to someone else and they're gone, and you can kick it on, and you could be down the other end of the field in 3 or 4 seconds. Like,
exactly. Look, all these rules are being implemented to encourage attacking play, basically. So as a defender, a lot of these things are maybe going to be a bit of a nightmare, but look, that's the way football was gone. There was an appetite to favour the attackers. So, like,
nobody thinks the defenders. It's a forwards game. Forwards. Everything is geared towards forwards. Nobody gives a damn about defenders. Let's make life as difficult as possible for them.
How no one pays to come in and watch the cornerback. Everyone pays to come in and watch David Clifford. Like, so that's how it goes. You know what I mean? But
there still has to be cornerbacks, though. It's like referees. You can't play a game without cornerbacks.
That's true. Look, we won't. We'll keep them around, but only for that reason alone. No, so the solo and go is really good. I think the 3v3 is good. I think, like a lot of these things, I know people are going to have complaints about them and have concerns about them, which is completely understandable because it's all new to us. The one thing I would say is that I wouldn't rush to judgment on any of them, really. You know what I mean? I think we won't understand the full value of them until we've seen 3 or 4 months of football and we can see the pattern of, the way games are going, the way the scores are trending, the way things are panning out over a period of time. I also think that there seems to be this mentality out there that, if someone breaks one of the new rules, like say, for example, if a fella creeps over the line for the 3v3 and the ref doesn't spot it, that it's a disaster. But like, refs miss things all the time. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like you go back to any game in the last, I don't know, 100 years, the refs are going to miss stuff, like, and they're going to miss obvious stuff. So again, I think it's more important that we concentrate on what's the longer term or the medium to longer term picture going to look like with these rules in place. And like the 3v3, of course, the ref's going to miss it sometimes. Of course, the linesman's going to miss it sometimes. Of course, it's going to be more difficult to implement at club level. But like, I think we have to get away from this idea that it has to be perfect and accept it's not going to be perfect and take the positives. And for me, it just gives the match way more structure. Having the three guys up, automatically teams can look up and go along. Now, they're not doing it really that much yet, I think, because of conditioning reasons. Fellas have the head down, they're carrying the ball, they're passing it to a fella coming off the shoulder. But I think as the season progresses, we'll see the real good kickers. Like, in every team has good kickers now around the middle third that can bomb the ball in. And I think we're going to see real benefits from that one as well. The one that I have concerns about is the goalkeeper coming up and creating the 12v1 in the attacking half of the field. And to be fair, it was flagged, you know, during the Interpro series. It was flagged that this could be a problem. Like, you know, I know we probably have goalkeepers watching. I don't want to offend them too much, but I do think it's getting to the stage where, like, we're trying to accommodate them. Like, there was appetite last year to say they can't get the ball at all, and then the FRC were like, well, look, if they go into the other side of the pitch, they can get the ball. But I just think that it's creating overloads, and overloads can be a good thing. It's creating this piggy in the middle stuff, you know, and it's stuff that we don't want to see. It's lateral. It's just very it's not a good spectacle.
Yeah, and even like looking at the Tyrone game at the weekend, you're just seeing, like, Morgan is the fulcrum and everything's going through him from the 65 upwards. Probably same with Rory Beggan. They're probably the two that had the biggest influence over the weekend. But like, that's not why we made change. They didn't make changes for us to have a very similar scenario, except with 15 behind the ball. Now it's 12 versus 11, and you have three lads almost stranded up the pitch. That I'm sure Parton was kind of thinking, geez, I'd love to get back and try and take the ball off Morgan or take the ball off Beggan, but you can't. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I think the only way around it is to restrict how far they can go or something. Honestly, otherwise, I just don't think we should be talking about goalkeepers the whole time. That's my own opinion anyway.
Yeah, no, like I had sympathy for them for a while, but I'm getting to the stage now where I think just like they've had their fun. I think like we love seeing Morgan come forward. Like he's such a good footballer. Beggan as well. Like, they can pass the ball as well as anybody. It is great, but like at the same time, it's not about them. Like, the game's not about them. You know, just them. It's about the whole team. It's about the whole spectacle. So, like, if Niall Morgan is that good, and he is that good as an outfield player, and we want to see him kick the ball around the place, you could play him centre back. Like, I'm sure he'd do a job. Now, maybe a few years ago, maybe, I know he's not the youngest man anymore. Like, maybe fitness wise, I don't know what he's like. Although he seems like he's bombing up and down at his leisure. But I just don't like it. I just don't like this extra man. It just makes for this really, like, it's good when, we'll say, Colin Reap the last day, he goes and he does a dummy solo and feeds a fella in. That's attack-minded stuff, and that's adding to the spectacle. But it's not going to be like that all the time. It's going to be fella, they're going to cross the halfway line. Okay, you come up, and it's going to be like, okay, you're kind of tempting the defence to come out and press, but sure, all they have to do is pop the ball over your head. Like, I think Fitzmaurice and Jim Gavin have said that, like, you know, okay, fair enough, we knew this is going to happen, but the incentive is there for the defensive team to push up and press, and if they get a turnover, the reward is that, like, you know, there's an open goal and you can, you know, there's a goal opportunity. But I think the trade-off isn't right. I don't think the balance is right. Like, if you press in that scenario when there's an extra man for the other team, it has to be perfect. You have to time everything right. You have to get maybe a lucky break, or they have to make a mistake. And I don't think, like, some teams will do it, and they might have to do it if they're down, or if they're chasing again, they might have to do it. But as I think we've seen already, teams will still be happy enough to just sit in and just kind of protect maybe the inside of the arc and let them have it. And that's exactly what we don't want to see.
Yeah, there's definitely, particularly coming towards championship, there's going to be a serious level of pragmatism to, like, how do we stay in the game? Like, and how do we, particularly if we're, if we think we're in a deficit with the opposition team before we start the game, how do we keep this as tight as possible? So yeah, I'd be definitely similar about the 12 versus 11. I just don't think it's working. The rules in general, like I looked at Roscommon and Down at the weekend, and you're just like thinking some bits of that, and you're thinking this is exactly what we're looking for in the new rules. High scoring game, loads of lads taking shots from outside that 2-point area. Now the 2-point thing as well, I would wonder about, like, particularly with, say, the breeze behind your back, like, and you could end up having 4, 5, 6 or 2-pointers within one half of a game, which I'm not sure. I actually looked at it the other day and I was thinking, Jesus, the art nearly too easy almost. Now, but that belies what we've seen until this point. But teams are going to get really, really good at that, you'd imagine. And a lot of players, it's going to be practice ad nauseum, bang, 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 over and over. And you could routinely have cornerback, wingbacks even coming up to kick 2-pointers, which is, it's different. Listen, the game can swing a lot quicker maybe than it can before. But just to get into some of the action from last weekend, where do you want to start, Adam? What was the team that poked your eye out a bit and you're kind of thinking, oh, geez, right, there could be something different about these boys this year?
I think Tyrone are the obvious one. I think Tyrone are really dangerous, and obviously as a Kerry man, that worries me. Like, but I think they're really dangerous. I think you have to factor in, the fact that they don't have the Canavans back in yet, and the two of them they're exceptional footballers. Like Dara's maybe on form at the moment, maybe the best forward in the country, possibly. He's that good. Like, you have Peter Hart then as well, Joe Goose, and these guys come back in. But like, I thought they were impressive the last day. No, Derry didn't play great. We have to say that as well. Derry didn't have a great game, but they just have that core of, obviously, Morgan. McKernan had a very good game. He got in for a brilliant goal. They're strong down the spine. Now, there's plenty of guys getting their chance around the sides at the moment. One guy who I thought was really good was Shea O'Hare, the under-20 from last year. He's a brilliant footballer, really silky, like really comfortable on the ball. He can come up the field and influence play. And Owen McElhone, who came on as well, he hit a couple of great points. He's a lovely footballer. So, like, you're looking at what they already have at the moment is impressive enough, judging by the first game of the season. To bring back in Canavan and the two Canavans and those other guys, I would really be worried about them. And then you have the added impact of Malachy O'Rourke, who's using his FRC expertise, I'm sure, behind the scenes, like another one of these guys who like set the rules and then came back in to take advantage of them. But no, look, I think Derry, look, it's early, very early. Look, we can't be making big statements about them or anything like that. But for a team who really last year weren't really in our thoughts at all for the championship, like we never saw them play that well. I was never thinking about them in terms of like, are they going to get to the semi-final? I just didn't see it happening. But this year, I think you can throw them in with the other maybe 4 or 5, possibly 6 teams, Division 1 teams, who really have a genuine chance of rattling this All-Ireland. And look, taking advantage of the rules is going to be a big thing, and I think they have a leg up there as well.
They definitely do. And even like I'm wondering what's going on the pitch even in Donegal. Like I know Murphy's back as a player, but you'd imagine he's potentially dictating a lot that's going on. I don't know whether that's actually dictating the session or it's feeding the stuff to McGuinness, and like absolutely like just feeding it to him. Like but it's very, very interesting. And obviously Malachy O'Rourke Tyrone do have an advantage. It's a massive advantage, and like Paddy Tally was quick enough to say it, I think, the other day after the game. Sure, of course they're going to have a leg up. Interesting with Derry, like Tally was only appointed on November 14th, like, so they're well behind the 8 ball compared to last year, and it might be a bit of a slow burner throughout the league. You're probably going to see the best of them, probably the last couple of rounds of the league and obviously the first couple of rounds of championship as well. Just talk to me quickly about what do you make of the Dubs. Fenton retired, McCarthy retired. Doesn't look like McCaffrey's going to be there. Doesn't look like Mannion's going to be there. They obviously kicked off with a right good win against Mayo the other night. Where are they in the pecking order without, like, I've just named 4 of the greatest players of all time, probably. Cluxton is still on board. But where do you think, I think he got a little knee operation recently, to be back on the pitch soon, Cluxton will. But where are the Dubs in the grand scheme of things, given the guys that are gone out through the exit door?
Yeah, like you would, if that was any other team and you named guys like that who are that influential and said that those boys are gone, if you did that to any team in Joe and most sports, you'd be like, well, obviously this year is a write-off, but it's not. Like, they have this system, they're bringing guys in They have a big pool of players to select from. Now, that doesn't always translate to a good team or a good 15. But going by the Mayo game the last day, like, it was just pretty smooth by them. I think like Bugler is quality, like 7 points. Like Conor O'Callaghan, like they still have all these guys who can do damage. Mannion's a big loss to be fair, because Mannion can score from he'd be a good man for the 2 pointers, for example. McCaffrey's a big loss.
He would have cleaned up. Mannion would have cleaned up. You could just see him getting the ball, jinking right, jinking left, and swinging this big kind of boomer over 3 or 4 times a game, potentially.
100%, yeah. And I was actually thinking about it. It's a different team, but Conor McManus stepping away, because his clip came up the last stage, the point from the sideline with the right foot. That should be worth 10 points, like, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, no, to be fair, I like Dublin, like, you're still looking at, like, Kieran Kilkenny was there tipping away the last day, his 2 points. Cluxton to come back in, like Cluxton, I'm not one bit surprised that he's staying on. Like, I'd say that fella, like, he'll outlast all of us, I reckon. Like, he'll there's no end to that fella. But having said that, I did think it was funny during the Interpro series when he was playing for Leinster, and it was the first time I've ever seen him a bit rattled with his kick out, because of the new rules. Probably more likely that he'd never played with half these fellas before, and there wasn't any connection there or whatever. But it was just funny. Down in Kerry, we were going like, Jesus, it's about time that fella's after getting a bit rattled, because he's always so cool. But he'll come back in and he'll make a difference. I don't know if he'll be going up to the top end of the pitch like Niall Morgan does. Like, I don't know, at 43 or whatever he is, will he be doing that? I doubt it. But do you know what? Dublin might actually have to look at that. If this does stay and it is a trend, maybe in games they might go, well, listen, we need an advantage at the top end of the pitch. Maybe they can take Cluxton out and put someone else in those scenarios. It'd be a big call to take him out of any game, I know, because he's so good. But look, if I was a Dublin fan, I wouldn't be overly worried. I think they're right in the mix. Like I said, there's 5 or 6 teams, Tyrone. There could be 7 teams there, like from Division 1, who have realistic chance of winning the All-Ireland this year, I think, and Dublin are definitely right in the middle of it. And
just even over the last couple of years, it's like a lot of lads have got a lot of game time. Lads that names that you wouldn't have known until recent years. Say just even like Sean McMahon, for example, Killian McGuinness, O'Gara up front even. There's lots of guys that have got game time in recent years that we wouldn't have known. Even like Padder O'Coffin-Byrne's going to come in. You imagine Niall O'Callaghan will come in. Obviously Con is going to come in as well. They're still there, and it's funny with the year that's in it. It's so wide open, and it's basically who adapts kind of best to these kind of new rules that we've never seen before. I think a lot of people will think, Jesus, like, this is so open this year. It was open last year, but it's basically like, who's going to pick up these rules and run with them and exploit them to the max? And if somebody does, like, I've kind of got on record, I actually think Roscommon have a hell of a lot of tools to potentially be a bolter. They've some of the best forwards in the country, probably one of the best defenders in the country in the shape of Brian Stack, deadly keeper in Karen, real innovative manager and coach in Davy Burke, who will probably be staying up at night thinking about how he can do all these things. That's just the nature of the way he is. And I think they're a potential bolter. And the last 2 All-Ireland winners have come from Division 2. I wouldn't rule it out at a massive price that it could be 3 in a row. But just looking at a couple of the games from the weekend, Armagh and Tyrone. Do you see much of Armagh against Galway at the weekend? Probably not a great way to get off, to kick off their kind of All-Ireland defence, shall we say. But and they lost Niall Grimley as well, which is not ideal, and he's going to be missing definitely a game at least. They faced Tyrone at the weekend. It's always going to be interesting when they meet, realistically.
Yeah, look, any of those All-Ulster games, especially in Division 1, they're always very interesting. There's obviously big rivalries there. Those 2 teams up there, they're all very strong. Look, Armagh are coming into this season as All-Ireland champions and deserved All-Ireland champions. We have to give them their credit. It's always hard to come back the year after, no matter who you are. Well, unless you're Dublin, who can do it 6 times in a row. But apart from that, like, it doesn't really... I think Kerry and Dublin might be the only team to go back-to-back All-Irelands in football in the last, since the 90s, I'd say I could maybe go back as far as Cork, I'd say, in the late 89, 90, something like that. I don't think there's anyone in the 90s. Yeah, I think Kerry have done it, and Dublin obviously have done it. They've done it several times in a row. But just with that in mind, it does, like I wouldn't rule them out at all. Look, they have the players, they've got a good manager. Maybe they'll get a lift from last year and they can push on and be one of those dominant teams that goes back to back. I think it's a huge ask for them. I think the league might be... it's not easy for a team to come back off that high. Do you know what I mean? And you're going away and you're enjoying yourself for the few months, and it's an unbelievable buzz. The next thing you're like, Jesus, we're back in now, and we've an away game there against whoever down, whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's just getting back into the slog of it.
Conditions are horrible. The weather is miserable, and it's a far cry from the last Sunday in July 2024. Yeah,
no, like I wouldn't fancy it anyway. You know, I'd never come back. I'd say if after 1-0 learning, but
just on that as well. Obviously, Rian O'Neill's not involved at the minute, and it was kind of put out there the other day. I thought it was kind of peculiar how it was reported. Oisin McConville was on the BBC Social, as he always is, and his closing line when talking about Rian O'Neill was, I'd expect him back sooner rather than later. But I listened to everything that came before that, and it was quite the contrary of that. Like, the sooner rather than later line came at the very end when he was kind of closing it up, but it was like the commitment involved, and he understands how lads need to take time out, and the longer he's out this year, the better, and this kind of thing. And so I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's back in a couple of weeks or anything like that. And like if McGeaney doesn't know and McConville's uncle is not sure, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if or when he'll be back, but hopefully he will be back. And listen, I would imagine that he might be back for around towards the end of the league or championship or whatever, because they cannot do without him. They definitely just cannot. He's just got that bit of X factor that brings that to the table. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go in his absence. Dublin and Donegal this weekend as well. Obviously, very, very interesting. Jim McGuinness's history with Dublin, going back to that 2010 All-Ireland under-21 final where Michael Murphy hit the crossbar from a penalty and Jim Gavin got the better of him, and then 11, which was one of the most surreal things I've ever seen, that All-Ireland semi-final that was 4-2 at half-time, and then beating them in 14. That's going to be an interesting game at the weekend as well. And just on Kerry and Derry, obviously this weekend, Paddy Talley, who was with you the last 3 years now, managing Derry. How do you see that going this weekend? And like, is there much stock in a guy knowing the intricate ins and outs of a county setup that he's coming up against, or would you place much stock in that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was thinking about it today. Obviously, he has loads of information, but you wonder, like, maybe if you get down into the nitty gritty and do really specific stuff, maybe he can give back some nuggets about this other guy. But I think like a lot of those Kerry boys have been playing for a few years now, and like the Derry backs are going to know what they're coming up against. Really, do you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how much stock I'd place in that kind of idea that a fella can kind of give him the inside knowledge. But and as well the fact that it's a completely different sport basically this year. Do you know what I mean? The rules are so different. Like, how can you say that, they always do this, but sure, like, it's a different tactics this year. They've got Cian O'Neill in. I'm sure he'll put his own stamp on it as well. But I would.
Were you surprised that Cian came back as well? Because I just thought it was interesting some of what some former players were putting out there in the years after he left, and even about he was kind of the physical trainer and coach, I think, at the time. And some of it maybe not so complimentary, even though he won All-Ireland with them in 14 and was there in 15 when they were 3 points off Dublin in a final. Were you surprised that he came back? Logistically and geographically, it definitely worked from him being based in Cork, but I was kind of surprised that he ended up back there as well.
I was a bit surprised, yeah, but to be honest, so many names were thrown out, and a lot of them now were selectors, but it was like, geez, are we going to get anybody? Because it seemed like everyone was saying no. Like, I think, like according to Tony Leno and the Examiner, who would know a good bit about Kerry football, to be fair to him, he was saying that like Donaghy turned him down, like Tomás O'Shea didn't want to be a selector, Gooch, Declan Sullivan, all these names. Like, and I know maybe Cian O'Neill's a slightly different category in that he's a specialised coach as opposed to like a what you would class as a selector. But I was a bit surprised like that. His reputation down here, it's hard to say because look, they won the All-Ireland and he was involved in that. And I know I've spoken to, say, Barry John Keane recently about it. Barry John has good time from, like, he said he's really on the ball. I'd say he is very, very organised and meticulous in what he does. There's no hanging around. Like, there's no, like, what are we doing next? He has it down to a T. Personality-wise, I don't know. I've heard people maybe say, oh, yeah, he could be a bit tough, like, but maybe you could say about any fella who's coaching a team. Like at times, like you have to kind of lay down the law maybe and be a bit strong. But yeah, look, again, I'm sure like any coach, he's coming into it with this mentality of like, this is like a blank slate. You know, we can create a new team here that plays a certain way and takes advantage of all these rules. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I would be a bit concerned about Kerry for the first few weeks of the league, not only because like they're going to be missing David Clifford probably for at least this weekend anyway. There's other guys who are still to come back. I think if Kerry stay up, it'll be a success really, because I think that Jack really needs to blood new players. He really needs to find. I think the core of Kerry's team is good. I think he needs to find kind of supplementary players that can really back them up. I think we saw against Armagh last year in the semi-final, like Armagh seemed to get stronger and stronger as the game went on. I don't think the same was true for Kerry, and I don't know if Jack really trusted his subs. I don't think he gave them enough game time earlier on in the league to really get to know them and give them a chance to settle into the team. So that's from a Kerry supporter what you'd be hoping this year, that we really focus on the league. And we don't want to get relegated. Kerry have been in Division 1 for over, I think it's 20 years now. They're the only, like, they're by far the longest standing team in the division. And that's nice, but it's not as nice as an All-Ireland. Like, it's not as important as an All-Ireland. I would definitely be, like, as you mentioned earlier, like Dublin went down and came back up and won the All-Ireland. Like Galway have gone down and came back up and been very good. It's not the end of the world playing a year in Division 2 if it means that the year before you're giving guys a real proper opportunity to kind of show what they can do and have them ready for the championship.
It's a real fine balance between blood and lads and getting results. It really is, and it comes down to those cutthroat last 10 minutes where you want the blood lads, but geez, you want to get a W or at least a draw and get points on the board. So that's a really interesting one. Mayo and Galway is interesting. Like a lot of teams, maybe not targeting the league. Pádraig Joyce has made no bones about the fact that he wants to win a league, and I honestly think he's right. There's only a certain amount of trophies you can win in a year. Why not go after them? You could get a bounce from it. In Division 2, you have down against Cork. Like, despite, I think Cork are down 12. Is it 12 frontline players? That was a real good result against Meath last weekend in a real high-scoring game. Down are obviously were defeated by Roscommon in a good game as well. Louth got a right good result against Westmeath last weekend. They faced Roscommon. Meath, who were obviously beaten, and Cavan were beaten as well by Monaghan. They face each other, kind of a local derby there. And you have Monaghan against Westmeath. So Monaghan had a good result last weekend, and Beggan was pulling the strings big time. Just in Division 3, this is a huge game actually for Sligo. With the best will in the world, and an Offaly supporter to the end, I did not see Offaly getting a result against Sligo last week. Sligo have been one of the most impressive teams in recent years. Rattled Galway in a Connacht semi-final, really rattled down in a Tailteann semi-final, and could have easily been in a final and could easily have won it. Were blown away in the second half by Offaly, and they're playing Kildare. And Kildare have started with a massive double scores win over Fermanagh last weekend. Like, if Sligo don't get a result there, they're 0 from 2, and the chances of them making a final are quite slim, and that would have been one of their main goals at the start of the year. So that's going to be interesting. Peter Keane, obviously, who you know well, is involved. His manager is Clare now. They were beaten last weekend by Antrim, so they need to get something there against Leitrim. Fermanagh against Antrim. Laois against Offaly, part of that double header as well. If Offaly are able to go 2 from 2 there, that'd be huge. And Division 4, you have Tipp against Longford. Tipp got a good draw on the wind-up last weekend. Waterford against Carlow. Carlow will be disappointed, you know. Kate Kern will be disappointed that they didn't get full points last weekend against Tipp. London against Wicklow, and you have Limerick against Wexford. Anything in particular, Adam, standing out from those lower tiers, or any particular story or narrative you're looking at?
Yeah, well, like, I think you definitely be looking at the teams that lost their first game, because they, as you said, they're under big pressure, and that's same for every single division. If you lose your first 2 games, things can get very, very tricky straight away. Like, you touched on the balance there between getting new guys in and trying out new fellas and getting results. If you lose the first 2 games, that can go out the window. Like, we've seen it happen with lots of teams before. It's like, okay, we need the big guns to come in now, and we need to get a few results. One interesting thing from Division 4, I thought, and it's kind of going back to last weekend, but the Wexford manager, is Haggerty? Am I wrong there? Haggerty, yes.
The mayor of Wexford as well, would you believe?
He's covering all his bases. So no, like, they obviously they had a big win. They put up a big score they put up 224 against London, right? So they were the joint second highest scorers across all divisions in the opening weekend, along with Kildare, who got the same score, and then Roscommon, who got 321. But I thought he had interesting comments in relation to the new rules. So kind of like talking about how he put up this massive score. He said, this is something that's going to change the way football is played. 2-pointers won't be available to you every game you play, but certainly with the win, they would be. London were quite defensive, and even when they fell behind, they didn't come out. They stayed fairly compact. There was now the option of having 2-pointers, and that certainly made a difference. So, like, that'll tell you right there. I think if Jim Gavin or Eamon Fitzmaurice were reading that, they'd be punching the air. Like, that's exactly what they want to hear. They want to hear that it's rewarding brave teams and punishing teams that don't push up and press. So, like, we're going to see different scoring stats over the course of the league. I'd imagine even GAA league tables on Twitter had a stat up there about the scoring patterns over the first weekend this year compared to the first weekend last year. So the average total points per game went up by almost 9 points from 28.8 up to 37.2. The total goals per game went up slightly as well. The average winning margin per game went up to 9.1 from 4.6 last year. Now, that side of it obviously isn't great because we don't want to see one-sided games.
Yeah,
I would say over the course of the league, maybe it'll flatten out a little bit, but definitely, look, more points, more scores, more shots, more kicking. So that's what we want to see.
Exactly. Just a comment in there from Joe Butler. Michael, is this a live show now? Yeah, it'll be live every week, Joe. 4:00 every Thursday. Last one, Adam, would just draw at you there. There was some interesting comments from Kevin O'Callaghan, who's not involved with the Kildare senior football panel at the minute.
Yeah, I thought this was really fascinating. I've never heard anything like this before in intercounty football or hurling. So Kevin O'Callaghan was dropped from the Kildare panel for this year by the new manager, Brian Flanagan. This guy now he was Kildare's Player of the Year in 2023. He played every competitive game last year for Kildare, and he says that he wasn't even part of, I think the number he gave there is 65. So 65 guys were pooled together during the off season before. Obviously, I'm sure they've whittled down their squad now, but he wasn't even part of the 65. So he was properly dropped, not like we'll keep you on for a while, but he was really cut out of the loop. So looking at his quotes here, I just think they're really interesting. He said, "The only thing that makes sense to me is that my social media is the reason I was dropped. It couldn't have been related to my performances. Maybe he thinks it's something that would bring negativity to the group. I'm not sure, but it's the only reason I can think of. It was a shock to me. I was completely caught on the hop by it." And those quotes where he was talking to
Dollery, I think, in the Sun, was it?
Dollery in the Sun, yeah. So I have come across Kevin's social media before. Someone had something up on Twitter and I was clicked into it. And what I saw at the time was, so you know the way fashion bloggers would have like a haul, they go shopping and they have a haul and they like, oh, I got this and I got that, and they try it on. So Kevin was doing that, but it was with his Kildare gear that they had gotten for the year at the start of the season, right? That's like, look, you wouldn't see, I was thinking like, you probably wouldn't see Brian Fenton doing that, was what came into my head. Like, but like everyone's different, you know what I mean? Some fellas are into their clothes more than other guys or whatever. No big deal. But I just clicked onto his social media today just to check it out and see if there was anything like egregious like that would like, you might say, geez, we can't have that fella on the panel. But like, he's an online trainer, right? He's an online coach. Now, he has lots of videos and pictures of himself with his top off, right? But like he's trying to run a business, like, do you know what I mean? Like he's trying to promote, he's trying to promote healthy eating and things like that. He's trying to give tips about diet, about gym work and things like that. There was nothing in it that I saw that was like, there's nothing overboard. Like, no, I don't follow him, so I don't know what his stories were like or any of that kind of crack. You don't know. Maybe there was stuff in the past that maybe his teammates might have been like, oh, geez, I don't know about that. Like, but he says in the article, like he was always conscious of like putting stuff up. He'd never put stuff up if Kildare had lost the game, for example. Like he'd keep the head down. He said he knows when to keep the head down, kind of thing. So I don't know. Have you ever heard of anything like that before? A fella being dropped off a panel based on social media? Like, no, that's one side of the story. We don't know the full story because we haven't got comments from Flanagan yet. But it seems like a really unusual turn of events.
Yeah, I think Kevin is the one who famously put in a Q&A in a program one time that his occupation was influencer. and he did it for the crack. Got absolutely slaughtered. And it's funny, he was at the Leinster football launch last year. So like they felt him good enough to send to the launch and speak for the county and speak for the team. So it's definitely an interesting one. I would agree with you. I'd say there's probably maybe another side to it. If that is the reason why he was dropped, you'd imagine it would have been verbalized to him, or there would have been some sort of reason, but it doesn't sound like from Kevin's comments anyway that there was much communication from the management. But it'd be interesting to see which local Kildare hack throws that question or lobs that ball in Brian Flanagan's. I doubt it'll be the Kildare GA videos that they do after the game somehow, but it'll be interesting to see if someone lobs that ball in his direction. But that's been a brilliant week one, lads. Great to have you all back viewing and commenting, and great to have you on board as well, Adam. We will be back again next Thursday at 4 p.m. Looking forward to a big weekend of hurling and football action. And until then, we'll see you then.